Geschichten.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I'm your host, Alex, and I'm joined by my friends Jem and Matt. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gaming the system for some exclusive content. Or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. Hello and welcome back to our exploration of disability in gaming. We're going to spend this second part talking about a game that's recently come out called To a T, released by Annapurna Interactive, who also released Stray, which is very popular with the pod here. So, this game is quite new, as I said, and it's kind of animated style. It's sort of very Japanese focused and inspired. Like it's very much like you're playing an anime, and it's quite fun, sort of bright, colourful, cartoony style. But basically, your protagonist is Teen, and you can choose to name them whatever you like. And you can also name their dog whatever you like, but you start off with the names as Teen and Dog. And the special thing about Teen is that she is a T-shape. Or they are. It depends, really. So basically they spend the whole game in this T-shape like this with their arms like this. And you have to navigate the world with them with their arms constantly up. And one of the first things you do in the game is you wake up from a nightmare. You've got your dog in your bedroom next to you, and you suddenly realise you need the loo. You're in a bit of a panic, and dog has to help you open the doors, get into the bathroom, and help you use the toilet. And you go through the doors, you actually have to turn your body like this. And like that. So you have to use the sticks to kind of turn Teen's body and twist her or them around. And yeah, it's definitely a very whimsical game. There's a lot of very whimsical things that happen, very interesting things that happen, a lot of interesting humour, a lot of toilet humour actually. It's very prevalent throughout the maybe 5 to 10 hours that you spend in the life of Teen. Teen, as implied by their name, has just turned 13 at the start of the game. And it's basically their life going to school, spending time with friends at the weekend, going shopping in the little map, which is just basically you've got your city, you've got your home, you've got the forest, and you've got the school. And and the beach as well. Wasn't to get the beach. So it's very cosy. It's definitely fitting into that mould of cozy games, which was a recent topic we explored on the pod. So you spend your life kind of navigating the world. When you start doing the little things, now this is one of the most fun parts of the game, is each episode of the game is introduced with a musical number, which stays the same, but the action within that you see on screen changes depending on what's happened in the story. And it's a really great song. It's very catchy. It's basically talks about T being the perfect shape and says that they are the perfect shape. And then they spend the song wondering why they are a T. They don't know why they're a T-shape. They want to know what their dog is thinking. All these sorts of really cute things. So that song opens up on every episode. And then at the end of each episode, you get a song from Giraffe, who makes you sandwiches. And she sings about how much she loves making sandwiches at the end of every episode, which is great. So if you like little songs, then you're going to love this game, definitely. So I definitely recommend that. But one of my favourite lines from the opening song basically explains how it's the little things that they struggle with. So it's changing PJ, washing face, using the restroom by myself. The little things are hard for me. That's one of the lyrics. So I think that's a really good reflection of perhaps some of the barriers that people with disabilities face on the day-to-day. It's those things that non-disabled people would take for granted, that they don't have to think about how they get up in the morning, how they put their clothes on, how they brush their teeth. And one of the coolest things in the game is that it really reflects some of the things I'd like to come on and talk about. So, dog, I mentioned, is perhaps the first assistance dog within gaming. Not your typical assistance dog. What do you think of when you think of assistance dogs, guys? Just to get a broad idea. You know
Guide
what breeds of
dogs.
dogs? Yeah.
Guide dogs, obviously the original ones, and then there are emotional support pets. And it's quite funny of how do you train an emotional support pet?
Who knows?
Because then sometimes they can sometimes they're just terrified. The pet is the worst kind of, the least soothing animal you could possibly have. And yeah, the idea of, again, what makes creating disabled character-based gameplay hard is that a disabled, like, depending on the disability, there are things, normal day-to-day things, I'm doing air quotation marks for normal, that they need assistance for. So you need to program in have an assistant dog, have an assistant dog, an assisting dog.
Yeah.
You have to have a companion that assists you in things. It's not like with, say, the Eagles in the Assassin's Creed, where there are tools that you use to do something. Whereas this is, right, if I, without this dog, then I can't turn the light on.
Yeah.
I can't open the bathroom door because I'm a T.
Exactly.
And just from you describing it in a few minutes, you go, that sounds like a lovely little game. It sounds like because what it would be simple to go is, right, oh, wouldn't it be funny if someone was stuck in the shape of a T? And you go, oh, that's funny. And then you go off and think about something else. But this is going, how odder things have happened than someone being stuck in the shape of a T. What would happen what if you just took someone and put them in that situation and then had a story happen to them? What would that be like? And then it branches out very organically into, of course you'd have a dog that can open doors for you, which is adorable. Anything with an animal in is always adorable. And then the things that they can go off and do, and you could have adventures, and you going along as a T, and it's just becomes you can see it in your head straight away and goes, oh, that's sweet. This little girl or whoever with this, going down the street like that with a little dog, and then saying hello to people as you go past. And then literally anything's possible from that once you've immersed it, because you need to ground it and immerse it and then build from there.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking, how could you have, what if Geralt was stuck in the shape of a T, or Kratos or Joel? You can't just put those people in here. Well, you need to make a world that blossoms out from that. So
exactly. But yes, dog subverts our traditional expectations of an assistance dog. Very small and very fluffy and very cute. And it's got a little cross on its bum, like a little animated bum. It's very cute. And basically you just press buttons that say, the button says dog or whatever, and dog will do the action for you. So he'll jump up and grab bits from the wardrobe. He also has hats. Must stress how important that is. You can put him in hat, which is great. I want to talk about aids and adaptations. And as I was playing the game, I was thinking to myself, well, I know what the obvious ones are. Teens got a really long-handled toothbrush, so they can reach around and reach their mouth like this. And then dog helps with the toothpaste, bops on it, and the toothpaste goes on the toothbrush. They've got a specially designed tap to clean their face that their mum made for them. And it squirts out from the top of the tap instead of from the bottom. So you sort of just go like this, lean into the water, and go rub your face like this. When you go and eat cereal, you have an extra long spoon to eat the cereal with for your breakfast. Interestingly, All the calendars that I've seen on the walls are dated 1999. I don't know what bearing this has on anything, but it might interest you to know that it's set in the late 90s. Other aids and adaptations, one that came into my head and is pretty obvious, but doesn't necessarily come to mind as an actual adaptation, is the fact that about partway through the game, spoilers, I don't know if you guys want spoilers, but I will say, instead of riding a bike like your friends, you ride a unicycle. Because when you are shaped like a T, you can't hold on to handlebars. So Teen rides their unicycle up like this, which of course is an adaptation. It's just got one wheel and not two, which is very cool.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah,
You just
it
go,
does.
it's one of those ideas where you go, right, what would happen if this happened? You go, yeah, obviously they'd have a unicycle, wouldn't they?
Mm.
Or a skateboard,
Yeah,
or whatever. You go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, obviously. And then, right, what they do next.
exactly. Yeah. So that's another great thing that happens in the game. Most of the time when you're not in school, you wander around the town and you get to do eating contests with giraffe. That's kind of the main activity other than shopping. So again, it's very chill vibes, very cozy game. One of the other things about Teen being in a T shape, and it mentions this in the song, so it's not a big spoiler, is that when they spin around really fast, they can fly. So they basically go up like that, like a little whirly tornado. And that is what the game purports as their superpower, essentially. And this taps into a really interesting thing about disability. Jem, you mentioned in part one of our look at gaming and disability about the Paralympics, and there was a lot of criticism of one of Channel 4's early ad campaigns for the Paralympics, saying that Paralympians are superhuman and that disability is a superpower. Because when you think about it, that kind of takes away from the individual just having a normal life. It's like, oh, well, we don't want their disability to be bad. Let's make it super good. And they can be so inspirational and so amazing. They have to have this superpower as the only way to overcome perhaps the negative attitudes or the assumptions around what they can or can't do, because they're super and they're really special. And I wonder how much is the game leaning into that perhaps negative way of thinking about disability. So that's
I think that's really interesting, isn't it? This idea that it's it's some sort of thing that you can, it just makes us feel better. I think, like, to say like, oh, it's the same thing as like people saying somebody who's deaf or somebody who's blind has heightened other senses.
It's not necessarily true.
That's not, no, exactly. In some cases it is. In other cases it's just that they've had to learn to use those other senses more because that's what they've got to rely on. And I remember when I was about 12 or 13, I had a friend who was blind and she was really good at finding her way around houses. She only needed to be told once and she would be able to find her way around. And I remember being amazed by this. And of course it wasn't amazing, it was essential for her functioning, you know, and for her to be able to go and visit other places and all of that. So, you know, but I didn't realise that until I was much older. So I think it's really interesting that there's this sort of, oh, it's okay that you've got this disability because you get this better thing.
Yeah.
And I think I think that can be quite harmful because some people are, you know, firstly, it detracts from the ability for people to actually be unhappy about their situation or to be honest about the difficulties that they experience. And secondly, it maybe sets up unfair expectations as to, you know, what your life might bring. And so I think it's problematic. I just have to share with you that while I was having that conversation, my entire family snuck through the room to get snacks and treats from the fridge. Snack again.
They're obviously well
giggling.
practiced. That's good. Yeah. But no, exactly right, Jem. I think there is a danger that it is problematic in the way that it tells that part of teen story potentially. But there are other parts to the story, which I won't spoil here today. I would urge you to go play. But it's also a story about being a young person, a teenager, on the cusp of becoming a teenager and trying to fit in at school. And in one of the early parts of the game, teen does face some bullying from the other kids in the school. And obviously, there's a lot there that maybe kids playing the game, because I think it is quite a child-friendly game, would relate to, perhaps, because obviously when you're in school, that sort of thing happens quite a lot. So I think that there is a place for this game in helping people work through feelings of trying to fit in when growing up, because it can be really hard. Because I've just realised, because I looked up what to a T actually means, and I hadn't quite got it into my head. I think I'd heard the expression previously, but hadn't fully appreciated that it just means exactly or to perfection, which is really interesting because there's a lot of talk, especially in the latter half of the game, about what perfect means. So it's definitely a game with a lot of lessons in it, I think. It doesn't go deep into what perfect is or isn't, but it touches on it in a way that makes you think about it, and think about how someone's perfect isn't necessarily everyone else's perfect, and also that what is perfect anyway, because no one is perfect. And, it brings up those kinds of ideas. So I definitely think it's worth exploring as a story. It definitely goes to some strange places that you wouldn't necessarily expect, but I think that's part of its charm and its quirkiness. It definitely surprised me in each of the chapters. Each of the episodes, there was something that caught me off guard. And I definitely think it's a game that is worth having a play with. And I still want to go back in and do more. Interestingly, the trophy list is really hard. So getting the platinum for this one's going to be quite tricky, I reckon. But yes, that's one to attempt in the future. So don't let the coziness of the game fool you. It's got some tricky trophies in there, for sure. Did you have any further thoughts, Matt, on our discussion? Oh, sorry, I think you're still muted. Okay.
The mentioning the Paralympics again, for the first time I thought, why isn't, because the Paralympics happened directly after the again, I'm going to use air quotations, I'm going to say for people who are listening, normal Olympics, the Olympics, and then the Paralympics. They don't happen at the same time. They happen in the same place, but in the 2 weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
What is the Paralympic village like?
I think it's pretty similar to the Olympic village, but yeah, they did have some trouble with certain places being not accessible.
Because literally the Paralympic village should be the paragon of disability friendly infrastructure, because you're taking disabled people from everywhere on the planet. You've got to get them from where they live to the airport, to the plane, to the other airport for the connecting flights, to the other airport. Then if it was when it was in London, getting through London, all manner, and it's not just a simple, there are people it's just a couple of thousand people in wheelchairs. No, it's every stripe of disability you could possibly imagine is there. And these are the most, in terms of the Olympics, is the most physically capable people in any given discipline. If you're going the disabled people who are like proving that the reason that they're there is the physical capabilities that they have, then that's where you should be taking your inspiration is a loaded word. You're going examples.
Yeah.
You're going of what is possible, not just going, oh, this person lost both his legs and now he plays wheelchair basketball. And you go, oh, isn't that inspiring? You go, look what he can do. He would beat the shit out of lots of people with 2 legs that playing basketball. And that just, and thinking of the reason I'm focusing on the Olympic Village itself is to go, you'd think that when you're having thousands of disabled people coming in, you need to make for it's there 2 weeks. You can't just put them in the place that you put the able-bodied Olympic athletes. And then that should make people be thinking, oh, we should be showing everyone that a completely disability-friendly physical infrastructure is possible.
I think that there's a lot to be said for like the legacy left after the Olympics and Paralympics leave a city, because they've had to do a lot of work around the Olympic Village / Paralympic Village and all the other venues for the sports to make them accessible and make the routes to them accessible. I think there was a lot of work done in London, well, and in Tokyo. I think there's been a lot. Paris, I know Paris is notoriously bad. The metro especially, or it's like the underground here, they're both pretty inaccessible. But yeah, there's still a lot to be done, but I think that every time the Olympics and Paralympics come along, then there are improvements made, but only within that like locality. So it is a shame that it can't be like expanded further. But yeah, that's a really good thought. Definitely. It should be where everyone starts from. Because if you don't start from an accessible start point, then how are you going to make everything fit for use? You're not, are you? So, yeah.
I'm reminded of when you went to one of the recent times you went to Wimbledon and the disabled toilet wasn't very good.
No, it wasn't very clean.
Yeah.
And that was at the start of the day. So they obviously hadn't put them down as a priority to clean them, from the night before. But
the places where disabled people are they're the afterthought. They're the extra bit.
Yeah.
Whereas they need to be the thing that is thought of first. It's like, right, we're building a temporary canteen for all the disabled athletes who go, oh, okay, some of them aren't going to be able to carry trays. Some of them aren't going to be able to reach up to the level of the counter. Some of them are going to be blind, so they're not going to be able to see what is going. And then you go, right, we need to plan for all of this. And that is doable. You have braille on the sidings, you have speakers, you have guide animals, you have literally the list, and the list is finite.
Yeah.
It's not just an infinite list of increasingly crazy changes that need to be made. The disabled people don't need to be carried everywhere.
No.
That's not what they just go like with your friend who is deaf, Gem. You go, well, you just go, oh, you don't need to carry me around this new house. Just tell me where everything is. Maybe show me where the toilet is so that I know where that is definitely. And then I'll take it from there. And you go, right, okay. It's the idea that disabled people can be an equal partner to anything. They're not asking to be carried everywhere. They're just asked to go, I need to be able to get in there.
Have access, don't we? So,
access. Yes.
But I should also say, I think really that the Paralympics should be first and not second, because then it will give a much bigger stage to the Paralympic movement. if you put it first, then people will watch it more, I would hope. But also, there's a common misconception, and again, it took me years to understand. But often people think that Paralympics, the para relates to like paraplegic. It's not at all. It's just a Greek part of a word that just means cross. So it's the games next to or across from the Olympic Games. That's all it means. It doesn't necessarily mean paraplegic, but it's often a thing that people think it means. But yeah, words are interesting, aren't they? But yes, so I think that brings to a close our
Can I,
quick
sorry,
look.
Alex,
Yes,
before
Jen.
you,
Of course.
when you mentioned about this game earlier,
Yes.
you said that it wasn't, you hadn't found it
Oh, yes,
necessarily
of course.
very easy to play.
Thank you
and
for
I
the
just wondered
reminder. Yeah. So you've got very simple controls and you can't really move the camera around. But in terms of things like the text size, so there's a lot of speech bubbles in this game because the characters all speak a form of Simlish. So they're like, bop-de-booby, bop-bop-bop-bop, like that. And then their little speech bubbles come up next to them. Sometimes the text on that's quite small to read. When you go to the visual settings, certainly on the PS5, all it is a bunch of filters. So they might not be helpful for visually impaired people or colourblind people. There's one that's really, really, I think, quite bad for if you might have epilepsy because it's just a bunch of neon colours like radiating like this back and forth, like all on the screen. And I found it quite uncomfortable to look at, so goodness knows what it would do for other people. What else? Yeah, I mean, sometimes the camera would misbehave when you play as a certain other character who I'm not going to say, because spoilers. What else? Yeah, and I think generally there's a lack of the wider set of accessibility options that were present in larger games, say for example like God of War and The Last of Us. The gold standard at this point for games is like the colour contrast, the audio description, the audio cues, things like that. Things like that are obviously missing in this game because it's a small game by a smaller developer. So there is room to improve on that, which is why I said it wasn't the most accessible game that I've played. And I definitely struggled with the text, I think, most out of everything, because sometimes I couldn't quite read what some characters were saying. It was also there's a lot of depth perception things. So when characters are far away, their speech bubbles are smaller, and so the text is smaller. Then when they come closer, their speech bubbles get bigger. So yeah, it was mainly
So
from
were
that
there
point of view.
any sort of
I think there was some
accessibility?
accessibility, but it was mainly like, I forgot. It was only like one or two options for things, with probably like subtitles, or then like a toggle for running or something like that. I think there was like literally two things that you could change and nothing else. So it was quite limited in that way. There's a lot of languages that you can choose the speech bubbles to be in. So it depends on what language you speak. But there's a lot of choice there. But I just think there could have been a few more options in terms of accessibility. And I feel like the visual menu was just one of those weird, when like games from the early noughties where they used to have like the grayscale filter or the sepia filter. There's all of those in there, which I don't know if it's like a Nintendo. It reminds me of Nintendo. Those sorts of games where you could just put a filter on and run around, and isn't this a cool, quirky thing? But actually, they could have done more to kind of explicitly say maybe this filter would work if you've got this type of colour blindness or something. If they do work for colour blindness, I don't know. But they could have perhaps looked at that as less of a gimmick and more of a tool, I think. Yeah.
Is it marketed as being about disability as a game?
Not per se. Let me see if I can find a description for you. You can read between the lines, I think. I would say. Let me find
Because I read the
little
blurb on Steam, and that did sort of seem to reference it, but I might have just missed it.
Let's have a look. Do you have the blurb to hand, Jem? Well,
Yes. It says, To a T is a narrative adventure that portrays the extraordinary life of a 13-year-old teenager whose body happens to be in the shape of the letter T. They live in a modest seaside town that they explore by foot, train, or even their favourite unicycle.
there we are. Yeah.
And interact with a charming cast of characters who live there. From teenagers' loyal, fluffy canine companion and their caring mother to a gang of despicable bullies and a giraffe that makes the most scrumptious sandwiches. After a chance encounter, oh my god. It just suddenly started playing
okay.
the video at me.
Yeah.
After a chance encounter, the teenager discovers a newfound ability and a story begins to unravel around a mysterious object enveloped in light that falls from the sky. But yeah, it doesn't talk about disability.
No, it doesn't.
At all.
That is interesting. Thank you for flagging that up, Jim. Yeah. I should have used the blurb to introduce the game, really. But yeah,
No,
definitely.
Your description was
Yeah.
better.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, once you've played it, you can read between the lines, I think. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the gameplay definitely makes it. I think maybe, I don't know if maybe it's just easier for me to notice because I also sometimes have trouble with little things. And I'm like, oh, well, that's clearly a disability thing. I don't know whether it would be as obvious to other people, maybe. I don't know. That'd be so interesting to see. But yeah, I've kind of informed you before you play it. Now you're going to see it as a disability. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what other people think. And I definitely think it's one that kids can play as well. I would definitely say it's a good one for kids. It's funny as well. So yeah.
I'm going to see if I can get my daughter to play it and review it. Because
Yeah.
I haven't got time to
I'd love for
play it, but I think
I think there's certain parts that might come across as slightly patronising, but then I also think the whole tone of the game is very, very anime, in the sense that they're like overly explaining plot points and emotions. They'll be like, huh, what was that weird shape that flew by yesterday? Or whatever, and then they'd have a long conversation about the shape for like a minute more. And you'd be like, okay, right, can we get to the next thing? But yeah, I think if you let yourself into the whimsy of it, it's definitely a fun game to play. Yeah. So yes, that does bring to an end our discussion of To a T. And I hope you've enjoyed this look at disability in gaming. You can find us on all your usual podcast places, and we should release another episode every Thursday. So thank you very much for watching and listening, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode. See you again soon. Bye.
Bye.